401k balance by age.
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Brian, I love the shows where we get to break out a spreadsheet, where we get to take an idea that someone else has come up with or some other thought someone else has and sprinkle a little bit of that money guy magic, that money guy dust on it.
Pixie dust.
That pixie dust on it and make it better. And I feel like over the last, week, 10 days maybe, this show has taken on a life of its own, and I think it has turned awesome.
If you go back, we did a show in 2019, 401k balance by age.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a completely different show because of exactly some of the things you shared. And this is just to give everybody kind of a peek behind the curtain. We have realized that one of the unique things, we love the abundance cycle where people come, get loved on, you learn, you apply, you grow. But there's a complete difference between what planning needs a 20-year-old has versus a 50-year-old.
That's right.
And we've kind of recognized that there's some customization, some uniqueness. So why not do a benchmark series by decade so people can come, learn, and really apply these things? And what I love is when I get comments from 20-somethings who's saying, I'm watching the 40-year-old episode too because I want to know things I need to be thinking about in the future. And then it's also for our older listeners. If you're in your 50s, you're passing this down to the grandkids or even your children that are quickly approaching adulthood. That's me, by the way. And you're trying to make sure this stuff passes forward. So a lot of learning opportunities with this series.
Yep. So one of the things that we're going to walk through is we're going to share some data that Fidelity puts out. They do an annual study every year. We're going to share with you how they went about analyzing their numbers and then how we changed them. Because we thought some of the numbers... they weren't perfect. Some of the assumptions they used, we thought, were a little detached from what we like to do when we think about wealth management and financial planning and abundance building. So again, we have tweaked it a little bit, put some of that special money guy sauce on it, and we're going to try to give you some benchmarks that you can use. How much should I be saving? And if I'm doing the things I'm supposed to be doing, where should I be at different ages and stages of life?
So I want to repeat that because I think it's worth sharing twice. How much should I save? How much should I have?
Yep,
Those are the two big things. A lot of you guys, we all want to know how we stack up. We're going to answer that on today's show. So let's jump in first. Bo, we've realized something. Staying the course. And by the way, 2020, if you just climbed out from under a rock, kind of a unique year. A lot of crazy stuff going on in 2020. Right. But what you're going to find is, even with all the wild things that have happened in 2020, staying the course is rewarded.
You know, normally when it comes to investing and thinking about how markets work, you have to have kind of a long cycle to see it through to fruition. You have to kind of participate in something for a while and then wait. And then when you come on the other side, you get to say, oh, wow, it worked the way that it was supposed to work out. What's so dynamic about this year, I think, is how quickly we've been able to watch one of the tried and true things that we've said on the Money Guy Show for the last 15 years now.
Yeah. This is one of those things, it's created teachable moments, without a doubt. I mean, and when I think about it, and let's go ahead and I want to kind of look at, kind of be your tour guide of what has happened in 2020. And all we need for a case study is to look at the S&P 500.
So what we did is we said, let's map out the S&P starting from the beginning of the year, January 1st of 2020, all the way through the beginning of June, right?
Yep.
So through the first almost 6 months of the year.
You don't see many years where you have both a bull and a bear market, as well as we start hitting full recovery mode, all within less than 6 months.
Yeah, and so if you don't remember, perhaps you weren't paying a lot of attention, one of the things that was so unique about this bear market that we started this year out with as we moved through the first and second quarter is that from February 19th through March 23rd, the S&P 500, the 500 biggest companies in this country, dropped by 33.9% over a period of just 24 trading days. For some context, if you think about the Great Recession in 2008, the S&P 500 was down 37% across that whole year. So here we were with a loss that rapid over such a short period of time.
So, and go back and watch the archives. Now, look, we don't know. This thing could still be crazy.
Sure.
Volatility still might be coming our way. But I told everybody, stay the course, hang in there. Volatility is your friend, especially if you're a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old. All of you financial mutants should actually get excited about the downturn because markets typically recover in a V-shaped recovery. So, Bo, what's the rest of the story? Or at least the story to this point.
The story for now is exactly what you said. We saw a V-shaped recovery. So the S&P 500, since March 23rd through June the 8th, has increased 44.5% over a period of just 54 trading days. So you're talking about a period of time less than a typical quarter, less than 90 days, and this market has done a full V, which is really, really remarkable.
And I love, because we asked Daniel, we said, okay, give everybody perspective on this. What were we down from the peak? And then what were we down or up for year to date? And this is what we found. Listen, look at this. From the peak, we're only down 154 points. That's only a few percent.
Yep, a few percentage
and then
points.
From the beginning of the year, 12/31 valuation, we're actually up 2 points.
So you may be thinking about this and be like, man, okay, so it seems like if I didn't do anything at all through this crisis, I'd probably be in an okay position. And that's exactly right. If you're not someone who freaked out and went to cash and tried to change your allocation and got scared and you just stayed the course, it was, in fact, rewarding as we're coming through on the other side of it.
So I want to say this in a different way, too, is that your hands in your pocket, you came out good. You've recovered. However, most of you guys, you're financial mutants, you're watching this, you didn't just put your hands in your pocket. You reached deep in your pocket to figure out if you had extra money for dollar cost averaging. How often do we talk about volatility is your friend because your behavior is consistent, that it doesn't matter if the market's going up, it doesn't matter if the market's going down, you are buying systematically because guess what happened? You're actually benefiting from this because as the market was falling off that cliff for those 24 days, you were buying through the process. You at least got one additional monthly purchase probably in your retirement account, but somehow you bought cheaper shares and then you fast forward months later, all those things have made even more money. That's
exactly
what,
right.
This is the beautiful, if you are ever scared of volatility, your best tool is learning how to use dollar cost averaging to help smooth out that concern and that risk.
That's exactly right. And I think it was so funny, because now that we're on the other side of it, it's easy to say, oh, we'll just stay the course. It's hard when you go through it. So this is what we would encourage you to do. And Brian, you told me this back in 2008, 2009. Bottle this up.
Yep.
Remember how you felt in the doldrums. Remember how you felt when the market was down 30%. Remember how you felt, and bottle it up because you will face it again. We will see these types of things again. And if you know they're coming, you'll be more prepared to, again, stay the course through it.
I think just reflecting. Now, look, we don't know what volatility is coming for the rest of 2020, but I look at my career. 2008, you know who I'm thinking of. I had one person that I couldn't, they just went 100% to cash. Still drives me crazy. I couldn't convince them. This time, I did have one person panicked. I was able to do what I call a Band-Aid portfolio. I said, instead of selling it all, let's come up with some alternative that protects you. It's one of those things where you nailed it, Bo. Make sure whatever situation you're experiencing or you experienced during that late March period where things were going crazy, you evaluated how that impacted your financial life. And Bo, we talked about it earlier. If you're one of those people, you stayed the course, but it just tore you up. You lost sleep. Now you get a perfect do-over to make sure your risk, your tolerance, as well as your allocation all match up. So use this planning opportunity to move forward in a more positive way.
That's exactly right.
So let's talk about, there's been some updates in 2020 on the way you can save for retirement. So we wanted to give you guys some stats on retirement savings basics, and then what are some updated stats for you in 2020.
Sure.
And here's what we found. We know retirement savings, salary deferrals on what you can do in your 401ks, your 403bs went from $19,000 to 2020. Now you can do $19,500.
Yep, little $500 pickup.
A little pickup. And look, that's not the only place we've had a pickup, is because if you're 50 and over, I'm quickly approaching this. You can now in the past it was $6,000 a year catch-up contribution. Now it's $6,500.
Huge.
And why does the government do that? They want to encourage you. They know a lot of you guys, when you reach 50, retirement's right on the horizon. they want to give you some type of tools to accelerate that process. So that's why they have catch-up contributions.
That's exactly right. And one of the things you hear us say all the time, we'll talk more about this, is we think that you should aim for saving 15 to 25% of your gross income for retirement. One of the things that's beautiful is if you do have access to a retirement plan, the government helps you do this. They provide a tax incentivized way for you to start getting to that 15 to 20% number.
But wait, there's more. There's also your employer.
Yep.
Typically is encouraging this behavior by giving you a matching contribution. Right. And a lot of employers do somewhere between 50% to 100% match. It's not uncommon to either see 50 cents on the dollar or a dollar for dollar match through your employer. So that is, we talk about that when we go to 401k presentations. When we talk about financial order of operations, people are always shocked to find out that we recommend employer matching contribution before you even pay off high interest credit card debt. And the reason why is that, Bo?
It's because if you are getting a dollar for dollar match on your contributions, that's a 100% rate of return. It doesn't matter how high the interest rate on your credit card is, it's probably not 100%. So if you can get a match, that is free money, 100%. You can't walk away from that. It's just too valuable.
So imagine our just sadness. When you find out, Vanguard did some research, 35% of participants in retirement plans are not getting the full match.
I'm going to say that differently. It seems to me like 35% of folks out there just don't care about free money. They just don't want the free stuff. They say, you know what? You're going to give me $100, but just give me 70. That's all I care about. Don't give me the full thing.
Well, I don't know. You know, we've talked about this on several shows. When we go do 401k presentations, we could just offer a $20 bill. I'm always amazed. People will lose their mind for $20.
Absolutely.
So when we do these presentations, I could set up the table with $20 bills for every person in the room. Not a single $20 bill would be left behind.
That's right.
But this is hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars, yet 35%. So 3 to 4 people out of every 10 don't pick up the money.
That's exactly right. Another statistic that we saw is that when you look at the average employer contribution rate, so what's the average amount that your employer is putting in the plan, it's about 4.6%. So when you think about, okay, if I want to be saving 15 to 25% of my gross income and my employer is going to put in 4.6%, they're already starting to get you moving in that direction. They're already covering part of that for you.
And then average savings, because I want to come back to the match.
Sure.
But average savings, and I thought this was really a big improvement. Now, this was pre-COVID, this was pre-pandemic, but at the end of 2019, the savings rate for the average participant, now this is average, so it's probably skewed a little bit, it's not median, is 8.9%.
Now, what I think is interesting is if you just take those two numbers, the 8.9% plus the 4.6%, you're getting kind of close to that 15% number, sort of the lower threshold of what we think you should be saving. So again, the deck is stacked in your favor to get to that 15 to 25% gross savings number.
We have people ask us the questions all the time. Brian, do you count employer match towards that 15%?
Oh, that's a great one.
And here's something we've come to recognize. It really depends. If you are in an income situation where you individually make less than $100,000 or $200,000 for a household, we think, yeah, let's count it. But if you make more, you probably don't need to count it because, look, you're getting further and further away from Social Security and the other safety net features. A lot of more and more of your retirements go following you. So use that as a guideline to kind of know how much you need to be saving for the future.
Love it. Love it. Love it.
So now let's talk about this. This is my favorite part. Let's talk about doing this by age. What do you need to, what are your savings in your 401k? And remember, we're going to share with you today how much should you be saving and how much should you have?
Two questions that 99% of people want to know the answer to.
So when we start with talking about 401k balances by age, you got to start with 20-year-olds. 20-year-olds, this is, we titled this the biggest no-brainer for success, but I also think this is the biggest vision for heartbreak. Everybody knows, I've shared on the show so many times, the entire reason that I am even the money guy is that I had a high school economics teacher that shared that if I could just save $100 a month, I would be a millionaire by the time I reached retirement. So I tell you this, is that everybody who's watching this episode right now, if you're in your 20s, if you're 20, 30s, even I'll say up to 40, and you don't reach retirement with 7 figures or success, it's because you did it wrong.
Exactly
and
right.
that sounds harsh, but when you see the numbers, all of you that are watching this in your 20s, when you see how easy this is, you're going to know just the complete power of compounding interest and deferred gratification.
I would go so far as to say that if you are someone in your 20s, you are the absolute easiest, simplest segment of the population to become wealthy. The deck is by far stacked so heavy in your favor because of the most valuable resource that you have, which is time.
So you hear that and you go, okay, this is the easiest group. So wealth creation's simple, but it's obviously not easy because if it was easy, everybody would do it. And the stats show that you guys are screwing it up. Listen to this. You would think Fidelity does research. They're the biggest 401k provider, especially for Fortune 500 companies. And they have done research on what are the biggest age groups that are taking distributions. Well, you're thinking, well, that's obviously people that are retiring.
Got to be the older folks, right?
Yeah,
the ones that are getting ready to retire.
65 plus, because people are retiring, they're getting the farewell parties, and that's when they start taking distributions. False. You know who the biggest distribution group is? People in their 20s.
And this was mind-boggling to me because here's what stinks about taking retirement distributions in your 20s. Not only do you have to pay ordinary income tax on it on the federal level if you live in a state on the state level, but there's a penalty with it. So you actually get hit on the way out the door if you're taking distributions from your retirement accounts.
So let's give stats on this. So I told you, 60. What I would think is common sense of what the biggest group taking distributions. That's people 65 plus.
Sure.
35% are taking distributions.
Okay.
The biggest group is 20 to 29-year-olds. 41% are taking distributions. Guys, this number is probably going to go up because of 2020 and all the pandemic stuff.
Sure.
It scares me. So let this be something. Look, I know COVID was just something that caught us all out of left field. You might need this money. There's some special things where you avoid the penalties. You don't avoid the income taxes, but you do avoid the penalties. Make sure it's your last resort. Don't do this first and then shortchange your retirement.
And one of the things we talked about, Brian, is we went around and kind of asked some of our folks in their 20s, hey, why do you think your peers are pulling this money out? Why do you think that they're doing this? And it was so funny. The thing wasn't, oh, well, because life is expensive or this thing happens or that thing happens. It was really more a little bit lack of knowledge. Oh, well, somebody just changes a job and they get a letter that says, hey, you can roll your 401k. And so you fill it out and you get a check sent to you and you put it in your checking account. That is wrong. That is not what you want to do. When you leave employment, you want to do a direct rollover so that you don't trigger the taxes. Don't pull that money out yet because it is going to be too costly to get it. Make sure you keep your army of dollar bills intact working for you towards the future.
So I can already see people's brains. You know how you see the hamster wheel spinning in their head. They're like, but Brian, it's just $2,000 or $3,000, $4,000. Guys, this is the secret of financial success. A little goes a super long way if you're starting in your 20s. So let's talk about 88 times over, explained and what that means. So you're probably first. You heard me say, I heard when I was a junior in high school from my economics teacher, $100 a month would make me a millionaire. Yep. But walk us through, what does this mean for the typical person?
Yeah, it's actually even better than what your high school economics teacher taught you. What we found is that if you are a 20-year-old and you would like to be a millionaire by the time that you get to age 65, and for our return assumption, we just assume that at 20 you start making 10%, and every year it just decreases by 0.1%. So 10%, 9.9, 9.8, 9.7, so on. Well, if you just started saving $95 a month, every month from the age you're 20 until you're 65, you will have saved $51,300.
Okay.
However, at 65, remember, the goal is to be a millionaire, you would have $1 million. Wow. So that means that you put in $51,300, but the market, the earnings, the growth, the compounding interest is actually $948,700.
So somebody who worked for a few years has a 401k balance. It's like $2,000. you think, why not just take the cash on that? Because that's what could $2,000 turn into. The reality of the situation is $2,000 might turn into $170,000 at retirement.
Right.
So, guys, take that into account. Think about that in the way when you're spending money as well as saving money. Every dollar you have when you're young is like turbocharged. So don't blow it. Don't screw that up. Don't make it that tearful event that I have is when I see that 20 to 29-year-olds are the biggest distribution group from Fidelity. That's a failure. And here's what I think is interesting about this. If you're saving $95 a month, 95% of your $1 million is growth. There's one sad thing if you're doing this the traditional ways. You have to pay income taxes on every bit of that if you pull it out.
Yep.
But guess what? 68.9% of employer plans actually offer a Roth option. Roth, oh my goodness, guys. If you want to turbocharge something, Roth means it's tax-free in the future. So if we could turn this $1 million, if it was saved in a Roth 401k, a Roth 403b, it will be completely tax-free.
Unbelievable. And so one of the things we get asked all the time is, how do I decide if I do have Roth options, should I do the Roth or should I do the pre-tax? It's really actually pretty easy. If you're young and you're in a lower tax bracket, you probably want to think about doing Roth. You don't necessarily need the tax benefit now. You'd rather have the tax benefit later. If you're older or perhaps you're in a higher tax bracket, pre-tax may make the most sense. It's really that easy to make the determination.
But let's hit them with some I kind of want to talk about the Money Guy way.
Okay.
On what they should have, what they should save, and kind of what we did to Fidelity's research to make it even better for the Money Guy family.
So Fidelity came up with a study, and they said, okay, if we take people at different ages, how much should they save to be able to replace a percentage of their income when they get to retirement? And the percentage of income that Fidelity wanted to use was 45%, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But we think that our Money Guy audience is a little more aspirational than that.
Well, Abundance Cycle doesn't just stop with us giving away free advice.
Exactly
we
right.
want you to live in true abundance in retirement. That's why I know we save 20 to 25%. You're like, wait a minute, save 20 to 25%. But when I'm 20 years old or I'm 23 years old, that seems crazy.
Yep.
Look, I get it. So we actually decided to go a step further and kind of walk you through some mathematics.
So this is what we found first. How much should you save? We found that if you start saving at 20 years old, and your goal is by the time you get to 65, you want to replace 60% of your income. And we just assumed that every year through your working career, when we took this from Fidelity, your income increases at about 1.5%. We just use that static. So you want to replace the future income that you'll have immediately pre-retirement. And we said, let's assume that our investments can grow at a conservative 6% over the long term. We think that it can actually grow much better than that, but let's use a conservative 6%. If you're a 20-year-old and your goal is to replace 60% of your income from 65 all the way till age 95, you need to save about 9% of your pay. That's how much should I save? You should save 9%.
That's pretty incredible. A lot of people are probably getting that just from their 401k with their employer. You're getting that. And look, even 25-year-olds, if you're a person who's making under $100,000, 11% counting the employer match, you're probably doing that.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So, and look at the 29-year-old, 14%. Guys, you're starting to think, wait a minute, you're telling me you want me to save 20 to 25%. If 9% gets it done when I'm 20, if 11% works when I'm 25, and 14% works when I'm 29, why are we doing 20%? Here is why. Remember, abundance is not just built into the abundance cycle. Go ahead, Bo.
So we said, if you take our advice and you do what we say and you say, you know what, I'm going to save 20%, we said, obviously we're going to probably be able to fund more than 60% of our pre-retirement income. What is that number? For a 20-year-old that starts saving 20% at 20 and continues saving that amount all the way until age 65, when they retire, they get a pay raise. They could actually live off 134% of their pre-retirement income, or more realistically, what does that mean? They could probably retire before age 65. For a 25-year-old, they still get a pay raise. They can replace 105% if they don't start saving until they're 25. And then a 29-year-old, if you're listening to this and you're about to turn 30 and you say, you know what, I'm ready to start, and you save 20%, just doing that from now until you get to 65, you'll be able to replace 86% of your pre-retirement income all the way through retirement.
So I think that's worth repeating. For my 20 and 25-year-olds, Bo didn't misspeak. If you save 20% of your income, and look, we get emails from you guys. A lot of you are saving 30 and 40%. But if you're just saving 20%, there's a chance when you actually leave the workforce at 65, you will get a pay raise. You will actually make more money. But maybe you're not worried about a pay raise. Maybe what this gets you is that you don't have to work to 65. Maybe this, if you have the thoughts, I want to quit work at 55. If I want to quit work at 50, you do need to be taking advantage of getting more. And then think about the person who's 29. You're like, look at this, you're like, man, I want to be over 100%. No, realize when you retire, you don't need 100% of your income because you pay income taxes, you have Social Security. You want to cover living expenses. So 86% of your salary is still going to be an outstanding retirement. That's powerful stuff.
Yep.
So we've shown you what the goal is if you're saving this percentage, but what does Fidelity say the average American has in their 20s?
So when we look at it, the average 401k balance for someone in their 20s is $5,000. And because you guys like to call us out on statistical measures, the median 401k balance, no troll comments, is $13,200. So you can see, all right, is that good? Is it bad? Where does that fall?
You guys are financial mutants. We want you to do better than average or even better than median. So we want you to have, by the time you're 30, by the time you're leaving your 20s, I want you to have 1.2 times your income.
That should be your goal. If you've been saving the Money Guy way, the way that you're supposed to, by the time you leave your 20s, by the time you get to 30, you want to have 1.2 times your annual income.
So make yourself feel better about looking at what the averages or the medians are, but your goal should actually be to leave your 20s with 1.2.
Love it.
All right, let's talk about 30-year-olds. Bo, this is you. You're in the messy middles.
I am living this life real hard right now.
So messy middle, I pick on people in the messy middle because I've been there, done that, is that this is where life is moving so fast. You got so many things going on. You get married, you buy your first house, you're having kids, this is when you're like, oh my gosh. I mean, I feel
life
like
is hard and there's a lot of stuff pulling on you.
I've got a 2x2 box that I'm packing a lot of life into. So let's walk through, because I picked on my 20-year-olds. We just got through the 20s because they were the biggest group taking distributions from their 401k. So you would think, okay, my 30-year-olds, that's probably improving.
We're older. We are wiser. We've not, we learned in our 20s. So surely by our 30s, we figured it out. We got this money thing. We got it nailed, right?
Here's a failure. And this is why, remember I told you, compounding interest should make wealth creation extremely simple. But somehow simple is not easy because there's so many distractions that are coming at people all through life.
Yep.
38% of workers who are 30 to 39 years of age are taking out distributions from their 401ks.
So this troubles me for two reasons, Brian. One, just like your cohorts in your 20s, you still have to pay federal income taxes, you still have to pay state income taxes, and you still get assessed a penalty if you're pulling money out of your retirement accounts. But not only that, you're far enough down the line, you don't have quite as much time as those 20-year-olds have to recover. And odds are, we didn't have this in the numbers, I'm betting that 30-year-olds, just because they have availability of assets more than 20s, I bet they're pulling out more than their 20-year-old cohorts.
Oh, for
just
sure.
because they have access to more.
Well, and this is a stat. We didn't even pick on our 20-year-olds about this, but I thought this was interesting. Not only do we have 38% of 30 to 39-year-olds taking money out through distributions, close to 20%, according to Fidelity, are also taking out loans on their 401ks.
Okay, so we get asked all the time questions about 401k loans. Hey, should I take advantage of this? Is this something I should? In our view, the 401k loan is really, it's like the fire extinguisher behind the glass. Like, you only break the glass if there is an emergency, if there is something dire. It's not to go buy the next car or to put the pool in the backyard, because it can be a devastating blow to your long-term financial wealth building.
I mean, this is the money, because 20-year-olds, it's easy to have compounding growth, exponential growth. 30-year-olds, guys, this is one of the last steps you have to double-digit compounding growth, meaning your money is going to do incredible things for you. Don't shortchange, don't short-circuit your opportunities by taking distributions, taking loans. I know we're coming through a weird year, so maybe you had to do it. But just remember, bottle up that feeling of disappointment if you had to get into retirement assets, so you can make sure you build the habits of saving and making sure you're not shortchanging the army of dollar bills.
That's exactly right. So we talked about, what was required to be a millionaire by 65. If you were a 20-year-old, it was $95. Well, maybe in your 20s you didn't figure it out, but you're 30 right now and you figured it out. So how much do you have to save to be a millionaire by the time that you get to 65? By our calculations, it's about $270 a month. So what does that mean? You will, over the course of your career, have saved $113,400. So you've actually doubled what the 20-year-old had to save, but that's okay because still 89% of your $1 million was from growth, was from compounding interest, was from the market, was from your army of dollar bills working for you.
Wow, just those growth levels, 95% growth for the 20-year-olds, 89% growth for those in their 30s. Guys, that's once in a lifetime opportunity. So you're probably, and I talked about this earlier, how do you determine between traditional contributions versus Roth, which are tax-free growth? But we've tried to break it up, and we have a kind of an indicator of 30%. If you take your federal tax rate, your marginal federal rate, and then your state income tax rate, it's around 30%. But we need to go deeper in that because a lot of people will hear that and be like, give me some numbers, Brian. I need to know numbers. What's the actual details?
So if you are someone who files a tax return and you file as a married filing jointly, you want to pay attention to the 24% tax bracket, and that happens at $171,050 for a married couple, or about $85,000 for a single couple, or for a single couple. That doesn't make any sense. For a single person, if you fall below those thresholds, there's a chance that Roth makes a lot of sense for you. You're in the lower tax bracket. Go ahead and take advantage of that tax-free growth.
And it's also that 89%, that's talking about value of your army of dollar bills, compounding interest. Tax-free is going to be really powerful, but you do need to be mindful as you have more success at work. There will come a threshold when you have enough success that you're in those higher tax brackets. Maybe the tax-deferred growth or traditional way of saving is even better.
Yeah, what we figured is like if you look at the 32% bracket, it's like $326,000 for a couple, or it's $160,000 around there for a single person. If you're above that, pre-tax makes sense. Well, you may have noticed there's a big gap, right?
Yeah.
For couples, it's a gap from 170 to 320, and for single, it's from 85 to 160. It gets a little varied. It gets a little nuanced, and it depends on your unique state that you live in, your unique tax circumstances, your unique age, your unique goals, your unique account structure. Maybe a blended solution makes sense for you inside of that range, but outside of that range, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Well, hearing those thresholds, I think there's going to be a lot of people that ought to be, if you're in your 30s, you're probably going to need to be looking at the Roth option because there's a lot of opportunity there, a lot of meat on that bone, as we like to say.
Yep.
So let's talk about, I want to talk about how much should you be saving, how much should you have. Let's talk about the Money Guy way and the research we found.
So again, remember, what we laid out is if you wanted to start saving and you didn't begin until you hit 30, and your goal was to replace 60% of your pre-retirement income, right? And we're going to assume that your income just increases by 1.5% every year. How much would you need to save to have a pot of money that will last you from 65 all the way through 95? Well, if you're someone who's 30 years old, you got to be saving 15% to do that. To replace 60%, you need to be saving 15%. If you wait till 35 years old, that number jumps to 19%. And if you're someone who waits till 39, you're on the cusp of the top of the hill, you got to save almost a fourth of your income, 24%, in order to replace 60% of your pre-tax income in retirement.
And we talk about Money Guy. If I was talking about Money Guy way, we always talk about 20 to 25%. I want you to be that hyper saver status. You can see 30-year-old, because compounding interest is so powerful to you, you can actually save a little less than that. But I want you to think about abundance. What can you save to actually get you even more? If you do save 20%, and you're 30 years old, you can see now you're going to have a retirement that's not 60% of your income. It's going to be 81%. Remember, in retirement, you don't have to save for retirement. You don't have to pay as much in income taxes. So that 81% that you're going to get at age 30 is going to feel like a great retirement.
Absolutely.
Same thing at 35. I think this is amazing. This shows how the math works. 19% savings rate is what's projected there. Gets you 62%. That's right in line with the 20%, matching up perfectly. Same thing, 39-year-old, you're saving 24% of your income. You'll get about 49%, a little less, but this is common sense. If you waited, meaning because every one of these scenarios assumes you started at zero. That's a 39-year-old who has zero retirement savings. It's not game over for you.
That's right.
If you start doing hyper saving status of 20 to 25%, specifically 24% in this illustration, you still have a retirement that covers half of your income. You stack Social Security on top of that, you're in a pretty good place.
That's exactly right. I'm going to say it again just for the people in the back. If you can save somewhere between 20 to 24% as a 39-year-old, you can expect to replace somewhere between 49 to 60% of your pre-retirement income. It's pretty amazing, pretty powerful.
By the way, if you want to get depressed, hang around for the 40s and 50s, assuming people didn't start, because this is what situation you'll be in if you don't use this as motivation. Because this is the sad part, and we put Fidelity balances in here for 30-year-olds. You can see the average balance is $18,500. You can see the median is $46,200. Bo, that doesn't strike me as those are people that will be living in abundance at retirement.
Those are not the money guy mental financial mutants. So we don't want you to shoot for, if the average is 18, I guess that's where I need to be. If the average is 46, I guess that's where I need to be. We want to give you a better number. If you are a money guy mutant and you've been doing what you're supposed to be doing through your 20s and through your 30s, we think that by the time you're leaving your 30s, you should have 2.6 times your annual income saved by the time you get to 40.
Yeah, from overachievers, you're trying to get between 2.6 to 3 times your salary by the time you reach 40 years of age.
Yep.
Guys, you can do it because at that point, you've almost 2 decades of being in the workforce, saving, letting the army of dollar bills starting to build something because you are getting close to reaching that critical mass. So get to work. Make the money do the heavy lifting for you. Let's talk about something I resemble. 40-year-olds.
Now we titled this, How Are We Going to Pay for All of This? I think it would be valuable for all the folks out there in Money Guy land to actually hear the title that you came up with for the 40s.
Realize I resemble this.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
I think it's interesting. When we got to the 30s, we call it the messy middle. It is such a messy middle that your title was still short because I don't think you had time to reflect as much as I did. I'm now wounded warrior status. I'm sentimental. When you get in your 40s, you recognize you're kind of mortal. That you got retirement in the future, but you also need to be making long plans even beyond that.
Yep.
So here's what I titled it. The short 40s wounded warrior, but then this is the stuff that I added on top. How are we going to pay for all of this? Have we saved enough for the kids' college? Crap. What about retirement? Oh, and beware of the midlife crisis. So that's not really a title. That's kind of like
a stream of consciousness
abbreviation of all the things that I think go through the mind of people in their 40s. Now, look, there's a lot of great stuff, too. And the fact that I think there is nothing sweeter than the fact that when you do recognize you have a mortality to you, you get more sentimental about things. You appreciate things more. I've gone on more reunion trips with like high school friends, college friends, just because you want to reconnect with people when you get this opportunity. But this is, look, it's easy for the 20-year-olds. It's easy for the 30-year-olds because they have this compounding growth factor which gets double-digit exponential growth on their assets. That's how powerful it is. But that doesn't mean that compounding interest is dead for 40-year-olds either. You can still get a great opportunity to let your money do the work for you, do the heavy lifting, but you do need to start getting serious because retirement is right around the corner for you.
And Transamerica did a great study, and this is what they found. They found that 2/3 of workers believe they don't know as much about retirement as they should. Well, you know what? We have a great solution for that. Listen to the Money Guy Show. At your workplace, just send out a blast email. Say, hey, check out this show. It's talking about folks that are our age doing the things that we're doing. 30% say they don't know anything about asset allocation. Even that's gotten easier. If you're still someone just building, just starting out, you don't have to know a lot about asset allocation anymore because there are things like target retirement funds that can solve that for you. And then 20% admit to not knowing how their retirement money is invested. Now, that's the one thing that I have a little problem with because you need to know what you're investing. Even if it's just a target retirement fund, you need to at least know that because how many times, Brian, do we review somebody's 401k account And all through their 30s, it was just like sitting in a stable value fund because they never went and actually put the army of dollar bills to work. Don't let yourself be the 40-year-old that wakes up and says, holy cow, what's my army been doing?
Well, the reality is your retirement assets, you're not going to touch for we're talking decades.
Yep.
So why should volatility, the risk of losing something in the short term, really jade your decision making for when you can't even touch this money for 20 plus years? So think about that. Don't let short-term mistakes derail your long-term opportunities because, like I said, still an opportunity here. We want to talk about what the power of your army of dollar bills is. What does it take to be a millionaire? Even if you've started at zero at age 40, there's still a chance there.
Yeah, if you're a 40-year-old and you want to start saving to get to $1 million by 65, you got to save about $780 per month. So if you think about that 25-year period that you saved, you will have saved almost $250,000, $234,000. But 77% of your $1 million still came from growth, from compounding interest, from your army of dollar bills doing the hard work. It is still possible, even if you didn't wake up until your 40s.
Now, I like to think, because there's people like myself, that we started saving in our 20s and 30s. They're not just stuck with what the growth. Now, that's incredible. 77% of your retirement assets are actually coming from the growth, not the principal contributions. Right. But there's also going to be a group of people, like I said, that have already started saving. Let's talk about the power of your army of dollar bills and what that means for them.
So if you are one of those mental mutants that's been doing this, we have a great resource out on our website. Go to moneyguy.com/resources, and we call this our money multiplier. And you've heard us talk about this 88 times over concept for a 20-year-old. $1 turns into 88, which is so awesome. But one of the things that you ought to be thinking about as a 40-year-old, if you are someone who's done the things that you're supposed to be doing, you should be thinking about what's my wealth multiplier. And if you go download this deliverable, we actually have every age, from age 20 all the way to 65. So I'll just use a 45-year-old, for example. Let's say that you're a 45-year-old, you've been saving, and you have $1 million built up for retirement by the time you get to 45. If you didn't save another dollar, that $1 million, that army that you've put together, should be able to be multiplied by 4.46 by the time you get to age 65 without saving another dollar. That just shows you how powerful the work that you did in your 20s and 30s can be from your 40s all the way out to age 65.
So go to moneyguy.com, get this deliverable. You can see the multiplier so you can at least do a spot check, see what you have at each age. We have this each year between, as you said, 20 to 65. Do a multiplier of what you have. Get excited. Let that be something that shows you what the opportunity is. And if you find out you're a little behind of where you think you want to be at retirement, use that as also the motivation to pick things up. Because, Bo, we talk about best time to start saving is when you're 20 years old. Second best time, today.
Right now,
I mean,
today.
Just jump in. Don't let it be something that messes you up because there are lots of opportunities. So I want to kind of talk about, we talked about how much should you save and then how much should you have. This is a running theme with this by age series we've been doing. So what should we have saved if we're in our 40s?
So if you're a 40-year-old, and again, your goal is to replace 60% of your pre-retirement income, and we just assume that your income increases every year by 1.5%, a 40-year-old to replace 60% needs to save about 26% of their income.
Now, this is assuming you're starting at zero.
Starting at zero. You haven't done any work yet.
That's not reality for everybody, but I want to show this just in case somebody is picking this up. They just figured out, hey, I've woken up. I've realized saving for the future should be important to me. This is assuming you're starting at zero.
If you're a 45-year-old, you actually have to save 36% of your income to replace 60% of your retirement. And then if you wait till 49 years old, you have to save almost half of your income every year from the time you're 49 until you're 65 to just replace 60% of your income.
Now, the good news, if you are saving the 20%, as you can see, we want you saving more than that. You've got to be a hyper saver, but it does show that there's still opportunities because maybe here's something we don't talk about. Social Security could be a safety net, but you also, some of these people might have pensions, so you could stack pensions, Social Security on top of these balances, because the older you get, the more likely you might have other income sources at retirement. So that means even for a 49-year-old that if you 25% might not sound like a great retirement, but if you stack Social Security, pensions, you're going to be okay.
Yep, and remember, this has you retiring at 65. Maybe you have to work till 67, maybe 68. This at least lets you know that your army of dollar bills can still work for you.
So let's talk about what the average American's doing, though.
So if we look at the average 401k balance for folks in their 40s right now, it's $39,200. But if you look at the median, it's $111,100.
I still think because you're getting close to retirement, in the next few decades, there should still be more. And a lot of people, you're a financial mutant, you're part of the money guy family. What goal you should have is you should be shooting by the time you're approaching 50 years of age. I want you to have 4.8 to 5 times your gross income by the time you enter that decade.
Love it. That's exactly right.
So let's talk about something I'm quickly approaching. This is 50s and beyond. We group 50-year-olds, we group 60-year-olds. This is all the people who are trying to figure out how they flip the script from saver to spender in a period of time that's coming up. But we named it, and this is also part where you really get to reflect. You ask yourself, have I been a wise field general, or is this a cautionary tale?
Sure.
Because maybe I had too much fun in my 20s and 30s and 40s, or I made some bad life decisions, or just life came at me hard.
Yep.
How do we get this thing on track? And it's just one of those things where there's really no more free lunches. This is a part where if you are approaching, you've got to be careful. And we saw this, research showed from Fidelity, and we see this, Bo. Which group has probably the most aggressive portfolios out there?
Yeah, you know what? It's the affectionately known as the baby boomer generation. And we've talked about this in show prep. Like, why is that the case? Well, perhaps you are someone who's waking up in your 50s and maybe later you're like, oh man, I'm not ready for retirement. And I just saw the guy's numbers. I can't save anymore. I can't like get my percentage high enough. So maybe I just need a higher rate of return. Maybe I just need to be more aggressive. Maybe 6%, 7%. Well, maybe I just need to be really aggressive. Throw it all out there. Have 100% equity allocation because I've got to make up for lost time.
Well, it's easier said as you're trying to get 3 decades of savings in 10 years.
That's right.
So the way people do that is they go way too aggressive. It's not uncommon. You see a 50-something-year-old at a 401k presentation that's chosen everything they think that has technology built into the investment options. Guys, that's not the way to do it right, because you also really run the risk of not only, yes, maybe you get a great rate of return if you nail the timing perfectly, but you have this whole thing. It's not just risk tolerance, it's risk capacity.
That's exactly
you
right.
might not have the time to fully recover, so be very careful with your asset allocation and taking too much risk for where you are in life. And also make sure you're taking advantage of some of those catch-up things that the government offers you. The government is very deliberate in the fact that as soon as you reach 50 years of age, they give you a catch-up contribution on all of your IRA contributions. They give you a catch-up contribution on your 401ks, your 403bs. Take advantage of those opportunities.
So let's finish the drill, right? So we've been talking about what's the savings required to be a millionaire. If you start at zero at 50, you got to save almost $2,500 a month to be a millionaire by 65. So you will have saved, by the time you get to retirement, almost $500,000, $446,000 to be a millionaire. Still, you've doubled, right? It's not horrible. You turn $500,000 into $1 million. That's great. It's very different than the 20-year-olds and the 30-year-olds. And if you're someone that waits until 60, it becomes a little daunting. You have to save $13,000 a month in the last 5 years, and only about 22% of your $1 million is growth.
There's several teachable things I think that are going on here. Is that I still think it's incredible that somebody who started at zero at 50, that 55% of their account balance at retirement still will come from the growth, the army of dollar bills working. And then the other thing is, because I'm a glass half full. I'm an optimist, which is a common note. You'll notice successful people have a tendency to look at things from a positive standpoint. Guys, you're going to spend in retirement 30, 40, maybe even 50 years.
Right.
I mean, it's just, so yes, you don't have the potential to get 88 times over on every dollar, but there's a portion of your portfolio that will still have the chance in your 30 years of retirement to fully maximize the compounding interest just like a 20-year-old has. So there's always an opportunity to do better, let your money do the work for you, and just get to work and don't Don't let the moment of, hey, the weight of this has gotten too big for me. No, there's always going to be an opportunity to find a way path and find a good path forward.
So if you are someone in your 50s and 60s, perhaps now you need to start thinking about, how do I shift the conversation a little bit? I've got the pot of money that I've built up. I've got the savings that I'm doing, but who are my retirement funding partners? Who are the folks that are going to help me with retirement? You do need to start paying attention to, what is my Social Security benefit going to be? What is the most advantageous time for me to start drawing? Do I start drawing at 62? Do I wait to full retirement age? Do I wait all the way until 70? Are there pensions from that company that I worked for back in my 30s and then I just haven't paid attention? Like, do I need to start rounding all of that stuff up? Because in retirement, every one of those dollars matters, and you don't want to get there and retire and on day one be like, oh, where's my money going to come from? How am I going to pay for my food every day?
Be an active participant in your planning future. That's so important. But I want to kind of talk about, what is the research? What's the Money Guy way? What did Fidelity kind of share in their research with us about people in their 50s and 60s?
Sure. So remember, Fidelity had it set up that if you wanted to replace 45% of your retirement income, you'd have to save X percent. We wanted to expound upon that. We said, okay, well, how much would you have to save if you wanted to replace 60% of your retirement income? So if you're a 50-year-old and you have not started saving yet, and your goal is to replace 60% of your pre-retirement income, you got to save about half of what you make, 52%. And then if you wait until 55, dare I say, it's probably going to be impossible, based on savings alone, to replace 60% of your pre-retirement income. 65 may not be the realistic goal for you, or at least a 60% income replacement ratio may not be the thing that you're working towards.
It might be a non-traditional retirement. There's still going to be opportunities.
Sure.
Like I said, there's still plenty of opportunity for your army of dollar bills to work for you. You can figure it out. But I do think there's a glass half full opportunity for even somebody who waits as long as 50 years of age. But I will tell you, it's scary when I look at the numbers that Fidelity provides. Look at that. The average is $188,000 and the median $65,000. That's less than the retirement. That's just a few years. Fortunately, we have Social Security and other income sources. We want you, if you did this the Money Guy way, we want you at 50 to have, at 60 years of age to have 8.1, essentially 8 times your income. So, but where should we be in our 60s?
Yeah, so if we look at just, again, Fidelity's research, average 401k balances, the average for folks in their 60s is about $212,000, but the median is about $67,000. But again, the folks who listen to this show, you guys out there are not the average. How much should you have saved by the time that you get to retirement? How do you know if you've actually reached financial independence? Your goal should be about 10 times your annual income.
Yeah.
When you get to retirement, if you have about 10 times of your annual retirement income, statistically, that should be able to provide for you from age 65 all the way out until age 95.
And there's some additional indicators of success that I want to kind of go through that go with this 10 times your income. First of all, safe withdrawal rate. The research shows that you can take about 4.5% of your total balance that you have for retirement assets, multiply by 4.5%, and that's the amount of money you should be able to pull out perpetually, forever, because you're essentially living off the income of your portfolio. So that's a good spot check for you. Here's another one. We saw 10 times income. Well, we know once 10 times income is, you're like, well, how does that work? You realize you don't retire off of your income because you don't pay income taxes anymore.
You're not saving
you don't
anymore?
pay as much. I should qualify.
You still pay income. You get to control it.
You get to control it a lot better. Plus, you don't have to save for retirement. So your living expenses are going to be substantially lower than what your income was when you retire. So what the better indicator of retirement success is, go figure out what your living expenses in retirement will be, multiply that by 25. Compare that to your 10 times income, and I think you'll be surprised, pretty close to each other. And then we always like to talk about the Millionaire Next Door formula. All that formula is take your age times your income and then divide it by 10.
Yep, that'll tell you where you're going to be if you're going to be an average accumulator of wealth. But again, if you want some of that Money Guy special sauce, we want you to be prodigious accumulators of wealth. So to know if you're really on the financial mutant track, do that formula, age times income divided by 10. And then multiply it by 2. That is a prodigious accumulator of wealth.
So, but we covered a lot. We went through 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, all the way up through 60-year-olds. There's a lot to cover. The biggest thing I would say is understand what you can control, because wealth creation is incredibly simple, but it's far from easy because there's so many distractions. There's so many things coming at you with consumerism, credit cards. There's all these debt potholes that you can fall into. Kind of understand, take inventory of what you have, what's going to create success. Keep yourself motivated. Don't get distracted. And even go back and look at how crazy 2020 has been, but somehow V-shaped recoveries have created the fundamentals that you too can save for the future and have success in retirement.
And look, this is what we know. You said it. There are going to be landmines. There are going to be obstacles. There are going to be things that come your way. Here's our commitment to you. We're going to keep doing this. Yeah. We're going to keep trying to share the great news of sound financial management so that you can stay the course. So when the market is getting its teeth kicked in, you can tune into the Money Guy Show and hear some sound advice. And another thing that we're going to do is we're going to put resources available for you out on our website. If you haven't gone to the website, moneyguy.com/resources, we have things out there, PDFs, spreadsheets, worksheets. They are 100% free. They are available for you to use. Go get them, download them, use them, tape them up on your bathroom mirror. We want you guys to live a life of financial abundance, and we're going to make sure we keep getting this great information in front of you.
Speaking of abundance, we have clients in 41 states.
That's right.
So you're probably figuring out what's the catch. Why are these guys just giving it away? Why are they giving away all these tools, all these analytics? We're going to continue to love on you with free information. We want you to come learn, apply, grow. That's the abundance cycle. You will reach a level of success that life gets complicated.
Yep.
When that happens, remember who planted the seeds, and then come and consider working with the Abound Wealth team. There's a reason this thing keeps growing. We started this as a passion project to educate you, but it has turned out to be the greatest business decision of all times. I wish I'd tell you I was a genius and figured it out. It's more because I think the intent was deliberate, and we knew that you just can't outgive, what success and abundance can come your way. You just pay it forward, and we have definitely been the beneficiaries of that.
Absolutely.
So I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen, Money Guy team, out.